My first question, is this the same grant from November 1st? Is this the same one? Okay.
Just to answer your question, just to clarify for everybody. So in November, we applied for the grant, and right now we are actually moving to contract with the grant.
Perfect. Okay, so I just want to make sure I'm on the right page with everybody. Appreciate your comments, Mr. Coleman, looking over these contracts because they can be very deceptive. So my questions are, for this first $107,000 of reading through this morning, there's a comment in there that these can be used for salaries. So I'd like to know what the breakdown is. There's no breakdown. It was saying loans in the documentation of so many loans per county. And so I'm trying to figure out how $107,000 would cover those loans. And then what are the terms on those loans? I guess I don't see any of that detail to receive those monies back. And then what happens to those monies after that? The screening process, like what I objected to in the application process, was the attachment G immigration policy, which is still concerning of the nonprofit entities not required to check citizenship. And so again, I'm raising up a red flag to that and still have concerns over that, of maybe what they can detail. And it may require me to go down there to their building and see the documentation that's provided. But just a concern, if they could address that, that would be great. And then my other question would be, have they issued any loans or funding where they didn't check on citizenship? So if we could get an answer to that. And then on the loans, or if some of this money is being used for salaries, are there other banks in town that they're using to create these loans, and is that sort of the way the program's designed for? And then maybe if they could discuss if they've had any defaults on those loans. Thank you.
Okay, that's. Are you prepared to assist us with some of those? Okay, sure. we have 7. Wait, Mr. King, I'm sorry I missed your last one. I'm writing them all down. But thank you. Okay, so we have basically 7 questions. Let's see if we can go through them on an orderly basis. First of all is salary information, and if you don't have that information, if it's available, I'm assuming it's public information, and you have those documents. That's question number 1. Question number 2 would be basically the terms of the loans that you give out. Okay. And question number 3 will be the revolving fund. Is it a revolving fund? Once the money's paid back, does it come back in? Why don't we do the first 3, and then we'll go on to the next 4. So salary information, terms, and revolving fund.
Okay, so the salary, we get reimbursed from the state. It's kind of a flat rate, you might say, per loan that is approved and closed, and that amounts to $7,500 each. And that's divided up. It's partly my salary. It's partly, paying for the building and the space that I occupy, my particular department occupies.
So the question would be, do you have cost accounting on the $7,500? In other words, is that itemized where it's a public document and Mr. King could review?
That should be available. I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, certainly, but accounting, I think, would certainly be able to provide that.
Wait, you have to come to the microphone and identify yourself again. That's just because it's recorded. Yeah. We have to do that. So go ahead.
Yeah. So yourself. Definitely when we
re-identify yourself.
Oh, sorry. My name is Katie Bowman, and I'm the executive director of Housing Resources. So when we write the grant, we actually create a budget that shows the salary information, as well as, like you said, the rent and supplies and software.
Is that public information?
I believe it's not available like our 990 would be, that has my salary information on it, because it's only required by the state if people, it's the highest position that is stated with that salary information. I'm sure that if Mr. King wants that information, I can share that with him. So it's not public.
My guess would be is that probably is public information, and if you would When you leave today, if Mr. King's still in the audience, if you would get a phone number and then make it available
Definitely.
or pursuant to the law and whatever's required,
Sure.
if you'd make that available. Are the terms, let's now shift to the second question, since you're the executive director, are the terms of these loans also, that's public information, I would assume?
Yeah, I would say they are. I mean, I can't say anyone's asked for them. They're 1% to 3%, and that's the guideline provided to us from Division of Housing.
It wouldn't just be the interest rate, it'd be the entire terms of the
Okay,
agreement.
and the term, okay, interest rate,
assume
the
you have
term,
a-
up to 30 years.
Okay, I assume you have a document that you can,
I have-
boilerplate, or is it-
I have, it's a worksheet. It's based on their income to total expenses, household expenses.
I'm not trying to go through all the terms with you.
Yeah.
I just want to, my
It
purpose
is.
here is not to review each term. My purpose is to, Mr. King's requested to see the terms, or at least, and so
Yeah,
they're available in that same phone call if you
Sure.
make those available to them.
Yep.
The second is if you would quickly explain, which is an interesting question, what happens when the funds are paid back and how's that accounted into the future?
That does
Do
go
you
back.
build a revolving fund, or what happens?
That's a revolving loan fund, RLF. Yeah, so all of that interest that's accrued and paid back does go back into the revolving loan fund. To
What
be-
happens to the principal? Principal
That-
and
Oh,
interest
yeah,
go back
principal
in?
and interest. Yeah, I talked about the interest as being kind of the income part of it, but certainly the principal does as well. It goes back into the pool.
So over time, your pool is built up? I'm assuming, I mean, the money gets paid back.
Well, yeah. I mean, if all the loans were paid back kind of simultaneously here, that would replenish the pool to where it was in the beginning.
And do you have can you give us an idea of the pool today? Do you have a balance of the pool, or those terms?
Well, let's see,
Or just make that, if you would, make that available.
yeah, I can do it. I don't keep those numbers off the top of my head either, but
Okay,
I think in our current CDBG fund, it's about 85,000.
All right.
Yeah, that's what we have. And that's written into the budgeting for this first year. So we're using existing RLF funds for these loans, plus,
Grant comes in and supplements,
and the grant is going to supplement that for the total package, basically.
all right? The next question is the immigration issue, and that really had two questions to it. One,
Okay.
do you inquire as to the immigration status of any applicant? Have you? And two, are you required to, or are you specifically
We're required.
You're prohibited from?
No, we're required to. And
Do you follow that?
on a formal basis, I would say no, but we do, I have a declaration document that all the applicants have to sign, attesting to their citizenship. That goes into every file.
You verify
And
it?
I'm sorry?
You verified that?
The document?
Oh,
Well, yeah, I mean,
when
certainly.
somebody signs the affidavit, do you just take it on its face value, or do you verify the signature?
It's
I mean,
taken.
that it's true.
It's taken at that value, yes, along with a picture ID.
Do your auditors that require immigration let you do it that way, or do they require verification? Trust, but
They
verify.
allow us, we're allowed to do it that way,
Okay.
to my knowledge.
That answers the question. It doesn't say that we're agreeing with that, but it answers the question of how that's handled. Number 5, I think we had on loans. I may have, well, actually, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. King, I may have put 4 and 5. It may have been one and the same. It was immigration and loans. Do you check on citizenship? Can you verify?
Have they issued or used funds with no checks on citizenship? And so I think he just answered that question.
I'm sorry, so I
And
put
then,
4 and 5 as separate.
yeah, and I think the loan funding, like, are there local banks that are associated with those funds?
Yeah, that's our next one. So, do you have cooperative banking relationships where they pick up a percentage of the loan, or what's your relationship with the private banking community?
There is no connection there. We have our, like I said, we hold that revolving loan fund in our own bank accounts, of course, and we service the loan then as well. So payments are made to Housing Resources. I post those.
You don't contract out the servicing, you do it in-house?
It's all done in-house, and that's in large parts to save on the cost of the loan. At one time, we did contract that out. It was to funding partners. Okay, yeah, I wasn't. That was prior to my coming on board, of course. But no, right now it's, and for the future, we'll be, taken care of in-house. The servicing of the loans, anyway.
Okay, and the final question, I know we discussed this in length, but several months ago, so my memory as well. But the final discussion was default. Do you have defaults? What's your percentage of default? Any information you can give us broadly about your defaults?
I do have that information. I just confirmed that yesterday. We have right now about 140 loans that have been created. Of those, there's about 5% that have been written off. There's deferred loans of 14%.
Now, tell me what deferred means. It means they're
Deferred
not...
okay. They're not due and payable until the property is transferred or sold. And these, I believe, again, these all came on before I was on board. I believe these are the down payment assistant.
They are, and
Yeah,
they're not actually the same program.
And it is, again, yeah, like Katie said, it's not the same fund. It's just that we service those loans.
Which is better of you to answer these questions on the default? Which of the two of you?
Well, I know those numbers. I've just verified them.
So let's go back to the 5% default. Tell me what 5% represents in real dollars.
It was about 112,000.
That's what you've written
out
off.
of.
Did you pursue foreclosure? Do you have security on your loans? Did you foreclose on any of these?
They have liens against them, normal, mortgage liens.
When somebody defaults, you foreclose on the lien.
Mm-hmm.
You foreclosed on the lien.
We have pursued that in one case that I've been associated with. It didn't come out to that. It was the account was taken care of by the owner. They came back up and caught up with their payments and so forth. So the ones in the past, I cannot speak of directly.
Yeah,
I just know those are historical
I think
accounts.
And for my own interest as well as I think probably the board here, we would like to know if something goes into default, if you're serious about collecting on the security. I'll give you an example. I know that there's an associated government in Colorado that several years ago I asked them what their default rate was on their revolving fund, unrelated loans to what your loans was. They had a 100% default rate, and they felt it was not appropriate to go ahead and pursue because these people were having a tough time, so not to pursue the security interests they have. I'm hoping that's not the attitude here.
No.
All right. Let me ask you, so you have 14% deferred now. Just for the benefit of the board and the people in attendance, tell me what deferred means. I haven't heard that. 14. So they don't make their monthly payment, and then what you do is you just say, well, you can just pay us when you sell the property? Or tell me what you mean by deferred.
Exactly. These are, and again, these are down payment assistant loans. Okay. I only include those in my numbers because we do all of our loan servicing in-house. We just have one program that does that. So those are included in there. Those could be extracted. Of the loans that we have under the guidelines from Department of Housing and DOLA, we do have the option of deferring loans. And it's all done, based on an individual basis, each borrower, each applicant will say. If there's extenuating circumstances that we see a real need for the home improvements, and they are just unable to accommodate monthly payments on this loan, we do have the ability to request that it be deferred. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that all these loans are approved through our loan committee. We have a loan committee that does review these. I submit it to them along with pertinent information, and they ultimately have to approve that, the loan or a deferred loan. And
What other so right now, we've got non-performing, probably 19%. By the way, a private bank, I think if a private bank went over 2%, they got the FDIC and moving in on them. So let's go down do you have any other category of somebody that doesn't perform?
Sorry, I'm going to talk a little bit about the deferment, just because the deferment, the majority of those deferred loans are down payment assistance for our self-help program and not for the rehab program. So in our rehab, it's very different. Our self-help loans, it's really like a down payment assistance loan, which right now, Colorado Housing and Finance Authority on a regular basis actually offers a grant in the same way to really help with closing costs. So that's the majority of those, and I wouldn't call them deferred loans. I would say they're due at sale, and that's really how it's a pretty common structure. So I think if we're looking at the revolving loan fund, we may just need to get you exact detail of what program is what. So that way you guys can really see in our revolving loan pool, those were set up, they weren't changed to deferment based on missed payments. That's how they were set up originally.
Okay, well, what I think would be very helpful for the board, but I also, for questions, the citizens out there, I mean, if they're mixing funds, what's really a non-performing? Are they avoiding the non-performing stigma? Is that what's trying to happen out there, or I'm kind of confused myself right now. What you really are these loans getting paid back, or are they quote forgiven?
They are getting paid back.
Yeah, and they have to be reflected as well. I do think we can actually provide for you a loan reporting summary that really defines out which loans and how they were set up. That might be really helpful just for you guys to see.
I think it'd be helpful. And also, let me ask one final question, then I'll let the other two commissioners, but as we're going through this, I want to...
Mr. Chair, may I make a statement?
Let me ask one question, Commissioner Puglisi, real quick. Do you forgive loans?
No.
Okay. So if a loan goes into default, you pursue your security interests?
Correct.
Forgive it? Okay. Commissioner Puglisi, and then Commissioner Jessamine. Commissioner Puglisi, go ahead. Commissioner Puglisi, you can proceed.
Okay. I'm having a really hard time hearing the conversation following what's going on. So, County Attorney Coleman, I have a question for you. Unless this item is under time constraint, I would ask that maybe we either defer this item to next Monday's hearing, or that I be excused from voting, because I can't really track what's going on. I don't feel comfortable voting on something without actually understanding all of the details.
Okay, Commissioner Justman?
No. So you don't actually, you're saying you don't really, they may be in default, but you don't forgive them? So what happens if they never pay? I mean, what happens then?
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, I heard you. The chair will take that into consideration, but in fairness, I want Commissioner Justman, he had some comments, and then we'll come back to the action we'll be taking. Commissioner Justman, go ahead.
So what happens to your default loan? You say you don't forgive them, but what happens when they don't? I mean, I know it doesn't happen just in 10 minutes, I mean, or a few days, but say 6 months, a year later, they still haven't paid, then what?
Well, then we would pursue, a foreclosure process through our attorney.
Okay.
Just as,
Okay, I think we have the kind of the context of what's going on here. I have questions. Representative Puglisi has mentioned her, and I think the request she makes reasonable. If we were to defer this for another week, does it create a hardship for your program?
No, I would say not. I mean,
And that also allows you some
Sure.
time for Mr. King or anybody else that's got interest in it. If they want to pursue that, they can contact you as well. So
Yeah.
at least for 1.3, which is the matter we have in front of us, would this also apply to 1.4, council? Should we continue? Oh, there goes that one. Okay, Commissioner Jessamine.
Yeah.
I mean, council, go ahead.
Yes, we need to approve 1.3 before we enter into 1.4, which is the separate contract. I think 1.4 makes reference to 1.3, so we want to be sure that 1.3 is approved prior to voting on 1.4.
Okay, well, we're not going to approve it. I'm going to make a motion that we move the 1.3 to defer the action on that to next Monday's commissioner meeting. Would that be an appropriate motion?
Yeah, I would say continue it to a date certain, being Monday, March 6th.
So moved. Do I have a second?
You're putting both items there, each one,
No, I have to do
individual-
one at a
okay.
time, so we're doing
I'll
the first.
second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Is any objection? No objection. This is moved to a date certain.